Hey guys, welcome back to the old mill shed. I'm Jason, and today we're hooking up my bush hog. Okay, so before we get started, just remember I am using an older tractor, a 1953 Ferguson TO30. If you're running an 8N, 9N, 2N Ford, TO20, TO30 Ferguson, other machines that don't have live PTO, live hydraulics, this is really going to apply to you. As far as the maintenance part on the bush hog, that's pretty much universal. We're going to go through that in fairly detail, and I'm just going to show you how I do it. There's other ways of doing it. We're going to cover some things that are actually wrong with this machine. I've only owned it for about a year, and hopefully give y'all some good information to help you out. Okay, so first things first, this is the cutter. It is a 5-foot cutter. I am unsure of the brand, but most of them are about the same. And you can see that I have it up off the ground, but I do not have jack stands underneath it. But if you look up at the back of Emmett, you can see that I utilize chains operating from a top link here to the pins on the cutter itself. And what I did is I picked it up, adjusted my chains in, and then I dropped the quadrant down, and so these chains are holding all the weight. This will keep it from falling on you while you're working on it. Now, even though this machine does not have live hydraulics, live PTO, and I usually have to use those to keep the height like I want it, that will work on pretty much any machine. If you don't have jack stands available, get you a set of those chains. Just be safe, use common sense. You are responsible for your own safety, but personally, I feel safe doing that. So last night, when I pulled this apart, it was getting dark, so I didn't really record it. These blades are in pitiful shape, but what I'm getting ready to cut, they're probably going to get beat up even worse. Reclaiming some land. I did put an edge back on them as best I could, and I usually use about a 45-degree angle. Remember, we're cutting broom sedge, little saplings, things of that nature. We're not cutting the greens for the masters. So as long as it will shear off the plant, it's pretty much all that you're required to do. Let me show you a trick for sharpening these. A lot of times when people sharpen their bush hog blades, they'll use a flat disc, something like this, or they will use a grinding disc like this. But what I have found out works really well is you go to Harbor Freight and you pick up these sanding discs. They are, I think this one's 36 grit. Usually I get a 40 grit, but this is what they had in stock, and they work out to about 30 cents a piece. And what I do is I just put this on the front of my grinding disc, and then I put it on my angle grinder, and this really cuts down that hard metal really good. Now you can see this one, it's got some wear in it. I've been sharpening chipper knives, and actually had to do some carpentry work with it. This one's about 5 years old, and it's about wore out. But for less than 50 cents, it really makes it worthwhile. It really saves these discs, and it's more aggressive, and it takes the metal off a whole lot faster. Another trick that I do are these pins that hold the blade onto the arm that swings around. We'll see that when we get underneath the machine. But when you buy these, this nut isn't on them. I think this is a 1-inch nut. Might be an inch and a 1/16. It doesn't really matter. Just find something that's sturdy, and I weld that onto the head of the pin. Now if you don't have that, the only thing that you have to keep this pin from spinning and not operating as it should is this little nib that's forged in to this shoulder right here, and this fits up through the arm that swings around on the bush hog. And these never hold these pins. These things always get rusted. So what I do is just weld the nut. I think this one is takes a 1 5/16" socket, and just put it on as you normally would. Put your lock washer on, put your nut on. I always put a little dab of anise on here and just run it in as you normally would. But when you go to take your blades off to sharpen them, now you've got a socket. You can use a socket and put on this, take your impactor, run this off, and it saves a tremendous amount of time. Okay, so here we are underneath the machine, and there's the arm that everything attaches to. You can see the center shaft goes up to your gearbox on top of the machine, which we'll get to here in a little while. And the way this goes together is your stump jumper plate goes on this, and we'll look at that here in a second. And you swing this around to where it lines up with your access hole. You put your stump jumper plate on, you put your blade on, then you run your pin up through it, then you tighten it down from the top side. Now it's going to be very, very hard for me to hold a camera and do this, so I'm going to sit this up so you can see kind of from the top side, and I'll try to set another camera up from underneath here, but in all likelihood we'll probably just have to see a before and after shot. Now here's a little shoulder in here, almost like a little keyway. That shoulder, that little nub that I showed you on that pin, is supposed to go in there, but you can see how this one is even more out. So if we didn't have that nut on the bottom of the pin, there would be nothing to keep it from spinning when we're trying to tighten and loosen the nut. And here's the stump jumper plate previously mentioned, and all this does is allows the mower to ride up over top of obstacles so you don't snap the shaft off of the gearbox. I know that gearbox looks rough, but it was actually just rebuilt about 2 years ago, and it's actually in really good condition. It's in better condition than the rest of the mower. Alright, so here's the stump jumper plate. Now the arm sits up underneath on the top side of this. This, if it hits anything, will ride up. Now, one thing you got to make sure of, when you weld your nuts on, make sure the bottom of the blade where it comes down, if you use to draw a straight line, comes out underneath that nut. You don't want that nut hanging on anything. That is the downside of having these nuts on here. Now you can, cut them down a little bit as well if need be. Ooh, that was a big burr. I had to lay you open. But you also, once everything's tight, want these blades to be able to move. That way if you hit something hard, it doesn't just take it. It can fold back, let it go past, and then centrifugal force will sling it back out to where it's supposed to be. When you're tightening this nut down, make sure that lock washer is flattened out. You don't want these things to come loose and sling a blade out from underneath your cutter while you're using it. Here on this machine is where we have our first major problem. This link should be able to fold back. That way if the cutter goes down in a ditch and picks up, it doesn't bend your bars here. This one, as you can see, has a metal plate welded on it, and it doesn't allow it to fall back. So we're going to have to grind that down and fix that link. Also, if you look down here, because I'm running chains, I have my lift arms, I want to run a stabilization arm up, and we will cover those in another video. I need longer pins on each side of this. Okay, so we have this link off of the bush hog. It almost appears to be homemade, but may or may not be. So for this thing to rotate as it should, this stop here should be below the center line
of your pivot point. And that way, if it needs to rotate back, it can. Nothing to interfere here, but it'll keep it from rotating forward so that when you pick the cutter up, it doesn't sag. So you want it to do this, but not this. So I'm just going to take my grinder, I'm going to cut that off, dress this up, and then we'll be back. Okay guys, so this is what it looks like. All I did is took my grinder, and yes, I got gloves on because it's pretty warm, and just cut those tabs off. I'm going to take a file and get some of the rough edges off of it, and we'll go back out there and we'll put it back on the machine and make sure it works as it should. Okay guys, and here we are back on the machine. So you can see that'll rotate back a little bit. Now you'll never have them where they'll flip all the way back, or at least not that I've ever seen. But that's actually just that little bit of rotation gives you a lot of lift on the back side of the cutter. So, and you shouldn't be going across deep ditches and coming down a steep hill and then right back up another steep hill anyway. You're just asking for trouble if you're doing that to begin with. So that's fixed. On to the pins. Okay guys, so an hour and a half later, this is on. You can see where I had to do a bunch of grinding and cleaning up here. The other one would not come off, and better mechanics would probably have tried to thermally shock the nut that was there, maybe percussion shock it. I operate a little bit differently. If it doesn't come off first try or two, I tend to go straight for, well, it can't be tight if it's a liquid, and that's what I did. Broke out your torch, cut the pin off, took the grinder, cleaned everything up, knocked it out, and put the new one in. This is going to allow me to put the stabilizer bar on. I only have one stabilizer bar at the moment. It's where's it at? It's this one right here. I'm debating if I should even fight that one or not, being that it's already getting on. I'm already way behind. I might leave that one for the time being and get it later. I'm going to hit it with the impact real quick, and if it comes off, I'll replace it. If I'm going to have to fight that one as well, no, we're going to leave that for later. So before you start cutting every time, you want to lubricate the U-joints on your drive shaft and check your guard here to make sure that it's spinning freely. And you want to check the status of your shear pin. Now this one is supposed to be a grade 2 bolt. Yeah, I believe it's grade 2. You definitely don't want to put a grade 8 bolt in there, because the theory is you want the bolt to shear before you break the shaft on your gearbox. Now we're just going to put a couple squirts of grease in each one of the U-joints here. Okay, so for your guard on your drive shaft, a lot of people put grease on them because you want that thing to spin freely. However, grease attracts, seeds from plants and just gunk in general, and it gets messy and it gets tacky after a while, and you really don't want that for your guard. So what I use is a dry lubrication. Now this particular one's made for locks. Any of them will do. Just as long as you put some kind of dry lubrication on there, I think it's graphite based maybe. Doesn't really matter. But anyway, you have a little divot right here, a little hole right here. All you do is take the nozzle, take that straw and stick it down in about a 3-second burst. Now I've already done both of these last night, but to test it, pick up the front of your drive shaft, hold the drive shaft still and see if this spins freely. And that's what you want. You don't want to be able to grab this thing or your pants leg or something. Not that you should be back here anyway. To hit this thing and then wrap you up in it. That's what this is here for. Definitely do not run a drive shaft without a guard on it. Now this is where an older tractor and newer machines differ. Since I do not have a live PTO, I have to have what is called an overrunning clutch. This way, when I step on the clutch, step on the brakes, the inertia built up in the cutter isn't transferred back through the transmission and continue to propel me forward when I'm trying to stop. And how this works is basically a big ratchet. Now if you're looking in, and say the tractor's up here, this thing spins clockwise. So when I step on the clutch, step on the brake, my PTO on the tractor is going to stop, but the bush hog is going to continue to spin. And you can hear that clicking. And what that does is just let it overrun. It doesn't, that's what it's called, an overrunning clutch. And it just protects you from the inertia of the bush hog. Live PTOs on tractors, you actually have two-stage clutches, and when you step down on it, it disengages that clutch. And it keeps the inertia from transferring through. So before you cut, every time, you want to put a couple squirts of grease in this. And then work it around a few times. Make sure it's nice and free and that it doesn't go back the other way. Okay guys, so here's the cutter all set up. I don't have the overrun clutch, I don't have the PTO shaft hooked up quite yet. But basically on my chains, I go chains, lift arm, and then off on the right side I put the stabilizer bar. Eventually I may put one off on the left side as well, but I just have the one at the moment. So the chains go up. I have 8 free links on each side. And I come up through the center and I have the chains hanging out to the outside just to keep anything loose away from the rotating shaft. My upper link is about 26 5/8. That's about where I normally have it. My side link, being this is the first time I've ever ran it, from pin to pin, because I can't actually measure it any other way, is 30.5. Set those two right, and then I just use my leveling box to level the cutter left and right. When I set this up, typically I like my wheel to be, if it's in the straight back position, about a ½ inch to an inch off the ground. Looks like it's probably about 3/8 now, which is fine. But this machine is ready to cut. And having these chains keeps it in the same position all the time, unless I just lift it up. Which at the point now I can unhook the Carter key and I can actually just use it in draft control if I wanted to. But where I'm cutting today, I don't have to lift it up and go up and down very often. So I'll probably put a GoPro on the back here, get a little bit of footage of it running. But it's getting late in the day. I need to get a move on. So yeah, that's overview of how you get the bush hog running, how you maintenance it. It's nothing really complicated.
Okay, so this is a 1964 Ford 801 Powermaster. It does have the diesel in it. And they've been having some electrical issues with it not wanting to start.